Addiction isn't about the drugs. It's about the hole they're trying to fill. You can quit the substance, drop the habit, even burn every bridge to your old life, and still feel that gnawing emptiness inside. Carl Jung saw addiction not as a moral failure, but as a misguided search for meaning, a distorted cry for wholeness. And here's the uncomfortable truth: no one is immune. Not the disciplined, not the strong, not even the lone wolf who prides himself on control. Because addiction isn't chasing pleasure, it's chasing something sacred you've lost. This is Sigma Male Community, the place for men who carve their own path, who value independence, and who refuse to be broken by a world that demands conformity. Today, we're tackling a topic that cuts deep: the real psychology of addiction. Not just the surface talk about drugs or bad habits, but the hidden forces that pull you into cycles you can't seem to escape. And more importantly, how to break them. Our guide is Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, whose insights cut through the noise to reveal what your struggle is truly about. Because addiction isn't weakness, it's a signal. And if you understand it, you can answer it and become not just sober, but unshakably whole. 1. The real void. Spiritual emptiness, not chemical. Need. Carl Jung's perspective on addiction is a game changer because it shifts the focus from the substance or behavior to the deeper, often hidden cause. A spiritual emptiness that gnaws at the core of who we are. Jung didn't see addiction as a mere chemical dependency or a failure of willpower. He saw it as a desperate attempt to fill a profound disconnection from one's true self. This void isn't about lacking dopamine or pleasure. It's about losing touch with your purpose, your authenticity, and the parts of you that make life feel vibrant and meaningful. When we're disconnected, we seek substitutes, whether it's alcohol, work, or endless scrolling, to numb the ache of that inner hollowness. Jung's insight, shared in his correspondence with Bill Wilson, a founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, was that addiction is a low-level substitute for a spiritual thirst for wholeness. For Sigma males, this can be a tough truth to face. You pride yourself on being self-sufficient, on not needing anyone or anything to feel complete. But Jung's psychology suggests that even the most independent among us can fall into this trap if we're not connected to our inner world. The first step to healing is recognizing that addiction isn't about the external crutch. It's about the soul's cry for reconnection. For Sigma males, this spiritual emptiness can be particularly insidious because it's often masked by stoic strength or hyper-independence. You might think you've got it all under control, that your disciplined lifestyle makes you immune to such struggles. But Jung would argue that suppressing your deeper needs, whether for connection, creativity, or vulnerability, creates the very void that addiction tries to fill. The Stoic ideal of mastering emotions is powerful, but when it becomes a wall that blocks self-awareness, it can backfire. Healing, in Jung's view, requires confronting this void head-on, not with more willpower, but with curiosity and courage. Ask yourself, what am I truly hungry for? What part of myself have I neglected? This isn't about abandoning your independence. It's about redefining strength as the ability to face your inner world without fear. By addressing the spiritual emptiness at the root of addiction, you can begin to rebuild a life that's not just free of addiction, but rich with meaning and purpose. 2. The dopamine mirage. Symptom, not source. Modern science often points to dopamine as the culprit behind addiction, painting it as the chemical that drives our cravings. But Carl Jung would caution against this oversimplification. For Jung, the dopamine deficit, the flatness, the lack of motivation, is a symptom, not the source. The real issue lies in the psychological and emotional disconnection that precedes the chemical imbalance. When we suppress our authentic emotions and needs, whether out of shame, fear, or societal pressure, we starve our psyche of its natural vitality. Life starts to feel gray, and our brains, desperate for a spark, turn to external stimuli to simulate the aliveness we've lost. This is why addiction feels so compelling. It's not just about pleasure, it's about escaping the pain of disconnection. Jung's psychology, rooted in his work on the unconscious, suggests that this disconnection often starts early, when we learn to bury parts of ourselves to fit in or survive. For Sigma males who often lean on rational thinking and emotional control, this suppression can be second nature. You might pride yourself on keeping your emotions in check, but Jung would say this creates the very void that addiction exploits. Healing, in Jung's framework, means restoring the connection to your authentic self. This doesn't mean abandoning stoicism or becoming overly emotional. It means finding a balance where emotions are seen as signals, not weaknesses. For Sigma males, this can be a radical shift. You're used to solving problems with logic and discipline, but Jung's approach asks you to dive into the messier terrain of feelings. Practices like journaling, therapy, or even breathwork can help you access those buried emotions, allowing you to feel without being overwhelmed. The goal is to generate vitality from within, so you no longer need external crutches to feel alive. By addressing the root cause, the disconnection from your true self, you can break the cycle of chasing dopamine mirages. This is where true power lies, not in suppressing your needs, but in understanding and fulfilling them in a way that aligns with your Sigma identity. 3. Shadow, your buried power source, not your enemy. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is one of his most profound contributions to psychology, and it's critical for understanding addiction. The shadow is the collection of traits, emotions, and desires we've repressed because they're deemed unacceptable. Anger, vulnerability, creativity, or even our need for love. In addiction, these shadow aspects often manifest as destructive behaviors, as they fight to be acknowledged. Jung believed that exiling these parts doesn't destroy them. It forces them underground, where they gain power and wreak havoc. For Sigma males, who often cultivate a persona of strength and independence, the shadow might include emotions or needs you've labeled as weak, perhaps a longing for connection or a fear of failure. By denying these, you might think you're protecting your strength, but Jung would argue you're creating a pressure cooker. Addiction can be the shadow's distorted attempt to break free, to reclaim the energy you've buried. The key is to see the shadow not as an enemy, but as a source of untapped power waiting to be integrated. Shadow work, as Jung envisioned it, is about turning toward these banished parts with curiosity, not judgment. For Sigma males, this can feel like a challenge to your identity. You're used to being the lone wolf, the one who doesn't need anyone. But integrating the shadow doesn't mean losing your edge. It means becoming whole. Imagine redirecting the energy you've spent fighting your shadow into something constructive. That suppressed anger, it can fuel your drive. That hidden vulnerability, it can deepen your relationships by asking, what truth have I buried? Or, what part of me is screaming through this behavior? You can transform addiction from a saboteur into a catalyst for growth. This is where Jung's psychology aligns with the Sigma mindset. It's not about surrender. It's about strategic reclamation. By embracing your shadow, you unlock a reservoir of power that makes you not just stronger, but more authentic and resilient. 4. Breathwork. The body's direct line to the unconscious. While Carl Jung didn't specifically teach breathwork, his emphasis on the unconscious and the body's role in psychological healing makes it a natural fit for his framework. Breathwork, conscious, rhythmic breathing, bypasses the rational mind and taps directly into the somatic landscape where suppressed emotions and traumas reside. Addiction often serves as a numbing agent, a way to avoid the pain of these buried experiences. Jung's psychology suggests that the unconscious holds the key to understanding these patterns, and breathwork offers a direct line to that realm. By engaging in deliberate breathing, you signal to your nervous system that it's safe to release what's been held back, whether it's grief, rage, or even joy. For Sigma males, who often prioritize mental control over bodily awareness, this practice can feel foreign, but profoundly liberating. It's a way to access the parts of yourself you've kept locked away, without needing to overthink or analyze. In the context of addiction, breathwork can be a powerful tool for integration. It's not just about relaxation. It's about unlocking the armor you've worn for so long you forgot it was there. When you breathe deeply and intentionally, you might experience tears, tremors, or sudden clarity. These are signs of the psyche releasing what addiction tried to suppress. For Sigma males, this can be a game changer. You're used to solving problems with logic, but addiction often stems from emotional and spiritual wounds that logic alone can't touch. Breathwork aligns with Jung's belief that healing requires reconnecting with the unconscious. It's a practice that doesn't require you to abandon your stoic strength, but enhances it by grounding you in your body's wisdom. By addressing the raw, unmet needs beneath your cravings, you begin to see that what you were chasing wasn't external. It was a lost part of yourself. 5. Individuation. Becoming your truest self, not going back. Carl Jung's concept of individuation is the cornerstone of his psychology and a powerful framework for addiction recovery. Individuation isn't about returning to a pre-addicted state or achieving superficial sobriety. It's about forging a new, authentic self by integrating all aspects of your personality: the shadow, the persona, the wounded parts, and the dreams you've buried. Addiction often stems from a fragmented self, where parts of you are split off to conform or survive. Jung believed that true healing comes from bringing these fragments together, creating a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. For Sigma males, who value independence and self-mastery, individuation resonates deeply. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. Addiction, in this view, isn't a life sentence. It's an initiation, a brutal but transformative call to reclaim your true self. For Sigma males, the journey of individuation can be both empowering and challenging. You might see yourself as already self-reliant, but Jung would argue that true independence comes from embracing all parts of yourself, not just the ones that fit your stoic ideal. This means confronting the parts you've exiled, perhaps the child who needed love, the artist who was silenced, or the vulnerability you've hidden behind a tough exterior. Healing addiction through individuation requires courage, not just to abstain, but to dive into the messy, beautiful process of self-discovery. It's about asking, "Who am I, really?" and being willing to face the answers. This aligns with the Sigma mindset of forging your own path, but it adds a layer of depth. Your path isn't just about external achievements, it's about internal wholeness. By embracing individuation, you transform addiction into a catalyst for becoming more authentic, resilient, and complete than you ever imagined. Sixth ritual: speaking the soul's language. Carl Jung understood that the soul communicates through symbols, dreams, and rituals, not just rational words. In addiction recovery, rituals can be a powerful way to reconnect with your inner world when logic alone falls short. Jung's psychology emphasizes the importance of symbolic acts to bridge the conscious and unconscious, creating a dialogue with the parts of yourself that addiction has tried to silence. Rituals, like lighting a candle to mark a moment of reflection, writing a letter to your addicted self, or even gazing into a mirror to confront your own eyes, aren't empty gestures. They're sacred technologies for healing. For Sigma males who might be skeptical of anything that feels woo-woo, rituals can be reframed as disciplined practices that honor your journey. They provide structure and meaning, aligning with your need for control while opening a channel to your deeper self. In the context of addiction, rituals create a container for the unspeakable, the pain, the longing, the shame that often fuels destructive behaviors. Jung would say that addiction itself is a distorted ritual, a repetitive act that mimics the soul's need for connection but fails to deliver. By engaging in conscious rituals, you send a message to your unconscious. I see you. I'm here. I'm ready to listen. This can be as simple as a daily practice of sitting in silence, acknowledging your struggles, or creating a personal ceremony to mark milestones in recovery. For Sigma males, rituals can be a way to channel your independence into something meaningful, without relying on external validation. They align with Jung's belief that healing requires reconnecting with the soul's language, validating the parts of you that addiction tried to numb. By embracing rituals, you begin to rebuild a life where your actions reflect your deepest truths. 7. Psychic splitting. The birthplace of emptiness. Carl Jung's concept of psychic splitting describes the process by which we divide our psyche into acceptable and unacceptable parts, often as a survival mechanism in childhood. This splitting creates a disconnection from our true self, laying the groundwork for the emptiness that addiction later tries to fill. For example, you might have learned to bury your anger to be the good kid, or suppressed your need for support to appear strong. These exiled parts don't vanish. They fester in the unconscious, creating an internal civil war that drains your vitality. Jung believed that this disconnection is the root of the spiritual void that drives addiction. For Sigma males, who often pride themselves on their stoic resilience, psychic splitting can be particularly pronounced. You might have built a persona of invulnerability to navigate a world that punishes weakness, but Jung would argue that this persona comes at a cost. It alienates you from your authentic core, leaving you vulnerable to addiction's false promises. Healing psychic splitting requires mending this internal divide, which is no small task. Jung's psychology suggests that we must confront and integrate these exiled parts, even if they feel shameful or weak. For Sigma males, this can be a radical shift. You're used to being the one who doesn't need anyone, but acknowledging your buried needs, whether for connection, rest, or even love, doesn't make you less strong. It makes you whole. This process involves asking tough questions. What parts of myself have I rejected? What did I sacrifice to fit in or survive? By bringing these aspects into consciousness, you begin to reclaim your life force. Addiction, in this view, is a symptom of this internal fracture, and healing means ending the war against yourself. For Sigma males, this aligns with the Stoic principle of self-mastery. but it expands it to include emotional and spiritual integration, not just control. 8. Meaning, loops versus dopamine. Loops, rewiring your life. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of meaning in human life, and in the context of addiction, this insight is critical. Modern society often traps us in dopamine loops, endless cycles of seeking quick hits of pleasure through scrolling, binging, or consuming. But Jung would argue that these loops are hollow, offering temporary relief but no lasting fulfillment. The alternative is what we can call meaning loops. Actions and experiences that engage your authentic self, like creating art without judgment, having honest conversations, or pursuing passions that stir your soul. These loops don't just distract you from addiction. They fill the void it was trying to address. For Sigma males who value independence and purpose, this shift is both natural and necessary. You're not here to chase fleeting highs. You're here to build a life that resonates with your deepest values. Rewiring your life for meaning requires ruthless honesty about what truly nourishes you. Jung's psychology suggests that addiction thrives in environments that disconnect us from our true selves. For Sigma males, this might mean reevaluating routines, relationships, or even careers that feel soul-sucking. It's about asking, what is this void truly hungry for? And then designing your life to feed it. This could be as simple as setting aside time for creative expression, reading something that challenges your mind, or sitting in silence to feel what's really there. These acts aren't fluffy self-help. They're strategic choices that align with your Sigma drive for authenticity. By creating an ecosystem of meaning, you reduce the pull of addiction, because you're no longer running from emptiness. You're building a life of abundance. 9. Relapse. Intel. Not defeat. The spiral path. Carl Jung understood that the psyche moves in spirals, not straight lines, and this perspective transforms how we view relapse in addiction recovery. Relapse isn't a catastrophic failure. It's a signal from your unconscious, offering critical intelligence about what still needs attention. Jung's psychology suggests that the unconscious communicates through our actions, and a relapse might be saying, "You missed something. Look deeper." For Sigma males who might be hard on themselves for any perceived weakness, this can be a liberating shift. Instead of seeing relapse as a defeat, you can approach it with the same analytical mindset you apply to other challenges. What triggered this? What unexamined pain or shadow aspect surfaced? By treating relapse as feedback, you turn it into a stepping stone toward deeper healing. This spiral path aligns with Jung's belief that personal growth is a process of circling back to unresolved issues, each time with greater awareness. For Sigma males, this means letting go of the need to be perfect and embracing the journey as a series of lessons. Tools like shadow work, breathwork, or journaling can help you decode the message behind a relapse, turning it into an opportunity for integration. This approach doesn't negate the stoic value of resilience. It enhances it by adding compassion and curiosity. You're not failing. You're gathering intel to become stronger. By reframing relapse as part of the spiral path, you align with Jung's vision of healing as a dynamic, evolving process, not a linear race to a finish line. 10. Emotional suppression. The original wound. Carl Jung's psychology points to emotional suppression as a key driver of psychological distress, including addiction. This suppression often begins in childhood when we learn that certain emotions, like sadness, anger, or neediness, are unsafe or unwelcome. To survive, we bury these feelings, creating a psychic wound that festers over time. This wound isn't passive. It's an active energy drain, depleting our natural vitality and creating the inner desert that addiction tries to fill. Jung believed that this disconnection from our emotional truth is the root of the emptiness that drives addictive behaviors. For Sigma males, who are often taught to prioritize rationality over emotion, this suppression can be particularly acute. You might have learned to see emotions as weaknesses to be overcome, but Jung would argue that this only deepens the wound, making you more vulnerable to addiction's false promises. Healing this original wound requires ending the war against your emotions. Jung's approach isn't about becoming overly emotional, but about seeing emotions as vital signals that guide you toward wholeness. For Sigma males, this can feel like uncharted territory. You're used to solving problems with logic and discipline, but emotions require a different kind of courage. Practices like breathwork, therapy, or even honest conversations can help you reconnect with your emotional reality. This doesn't mean abandoning stoicism. It means expanding it to include emotional authenticity. By allowing yourself to feel without judgment, you reduce the need for addiction as a coping mechanism. You begin to see that the low you're escaping isn't random. It's the weight of every unfelt tear, every stifled roar. Healing starts when you give yourself the permission to be fully human. 11. The addictive loop. Emptiness. Crash, escape, shame. Carl Jung's insights help us map the addictive loop, a vicious cycle that begins with inner emptiness, leads to a dopamine crash, prompts escape through addictive behaviors, and ends in shame, which deepens the emptiness. This loop is self-perpetuating, as each stage feeds the next. The emptiness creates a sense of flatness, where life feels meaningless. The crash drives us to seek relief through addiction, which offers a temporary high but no lasting solution. The shame that follows, feeling weak or broken, only reinforces the original emptiness, starting the cycle anew. Jung's psychology reveals that addiction isn't a moral failing, but a predictable response to unbearable inner pain. For Sigma males who might be particularly sensitive to shame around perceived weaknesses, understanding this loop can be a game changer. It shifts the focus from self-blame to self-understanding, aligning with your analytical nature. Breaking this loop requires intervening at multiple points. Jung would suggest addressing the root emptiness through shadow work and reconnection with your true self. Breathwork can help regulate the nervous system during the crash, offering healthier ways to manage discomfort. And dismantling shame involves reframing relapse as intel, not defeat. For Sigma males, this approach leverages your strength in problem-solving while adding a layer of compassion. You're not weak for struggling. You're human for seeking relief. By understanding the loop, you can start to disrupt it, replacing destructive patterns with ones that nourish your soul. This isn't about willpower alone. It's about building a life where addiction no longer makes sense. 12th, soul-nourishing choices. Building your authentic ecosystem. Carl Jung was clear that healing cannot happen in a toxic environment. Addiction thrives in spaces that disconnect us from our true selves, whether it's a soul-draining job, a numbing relationship, or a routine devoid of creativity. Jung's psychology emphasizes the need to create an ecosystem that reflects and supports your authentic self. This means making soul-nourishing choices, enforcing boundaries, pursuing passions, or engaging in activities that resonate deeply. For Sigma males who value independence, this aligns perfectly with your desire to live on your own terms. But it requires ruthless honesty about what in your life feeds addiction versus what feeds your soul. Healing isn't just about stopping destructive behaviors. It's about building a life that makes those behaviors irrelevant. Creating this ecosystem is a strategic act of self-allegiance. Jung would encourage you to start small but decisively. One boundary set, one honest conversation, one creative impulse followed without censorship. These choices chip away at the old persona and build a foundation for your integrated self. For Sigma males, this process can feel empowering, as it's about taking control of your environment rather than conforming to external expectations. It's not about chasing external validation, but about aligning your life with your inner truth. By making soul-nourishing choices, you create a space where your authentic self can thrive, reducing the need for addiction's false promises. This is where your Sigma independence shines, not in isolation, but in crafting a life that's truly yours. 13. The call of the unconscious, dreams and symbols as guides. Carl Jung revered dreams and symbols as direct messages from the unconscious, offering insights that rational analysis often misses. In addiction recovery, paying attention to these signals can reveal the deeper conflicts or needs driving your behaviors. A recurring dream, a potent symbol, or even a strange coincidence might be your psyche pointing to unresolved pain or buried talents. Jung believed that the unconscious is always trying to guide us toward wholeness, but addiction often drowns out these messages. For Sigma males, who might lean heavily on logic, engaging with dreams and symbols can feel like a stretch. But Jung's psychology suggests that these are strategic tools for self-discovery, offering clarity that complements your analytical strengths. Honoring your unconscious doesn't require mysticism. It's about listening to your inner wisdom. Practices like journaling your dreams, reflecting on recurring symbols, or noticing synchronicities can help you decode these messages. For Sigma males, this can be reframed as intelligence gathering, a way to access data your conscious mind might overlook. In recovery, these insights can guide you toward integrating shadow aspects or addressing unmet needs. Jung's work with the unconscious aligns with the Sigma drive for self-mastery, but it adds a layer of depth. True mastery includes the unseen parts of yourself. By engaging with your dreams and symbols, you open a vital dialogue with your psyche, paving the way for lasting healing. 14. Addiction as a distorted call home. Perhaps Carl Jung's most profound insight is that addiction is a distorted call home, a desperate, malfunctioning attempt by your deepest self to get your attention. Beneath its destructive surface, addiction is your psyche screaming, "You are lost. Come back to who you truly are." Jung believed that this call comes from the self with a capital S, the core of your being that seeks wholeness. The pain of addiction is the friction of living out of alignment with this core. For Sigma males who value authenticity and independence, this reframing can be incredibly powerful. Addiction isn't a sign of weakness. It's a signal that you've strayed from your true path. Healing means answering this call, not by fighting the addiction, but by listening to what it's trying to tell you. This perspective transforms recovery into a journey of self-reclamation. Jung's psychology encourages you to see addiction not as an enemy to defeat, but as a coded message from your soul. For Sigma males, this aligns with your drive to forge your own path, but it requires a shift. Instead of battling external forces, you're navigating an internal landscape. Tools like shadow work, breathwork, and rituals can help you decipher this message, guiding you toward integration and wholeness. By answering the call home, you don't just overcome addiction. You become more authentic, more powerful, and more aligned with your true self. This is the ultimate Sigma victory, not just surviving, but thriving as the man you were always meant to be. As we close this deep dive into the psychology of addiction through Carl Jung's lens, I want you to take this away. Addiction isn't just a problem to fix. It's an opportunity to transform. By understanding the spiritual and psychological roots of your struggles, you can turn pain into power, emptiness into wholeness. Here at Sigma Male Community, we're committed to guiding you on this journey, not just to overcome addiction, but to become the strongest, most authentic version of yourself.